If you're publishing a book, getting the right book cover can make a really big difference in sales, but it's difficult to get a really good book cover because you need some experience with design tools or have to pay for stock photos or premium fonts and then know how to put it all together in a way that's going to attract the right readers. I wanted to show you today a tool that I built on DIY book covers, which is a place I've been sharing book design templates for indie authors for about 10 or 15 years. It's always sort of been a hatchet job. It's been not quite as good as premium professional book cover design, but something that some authors could use if they had to do it by themselves on a budget. And it's worked for a lot of people, but I think this tool is going to work better for most people. So all you need to do is go in here and do your book title and author name. I would probably skip the tagline and subtitle for now until you have some experience using this tool. And then we're going to pick our genre. Each one of these genres has a bunch of subgenres. And the reason this is important is because if you just go onto an AI image generated tool and you try to ask for a book cover design, you probably won't know the right types of common elements that are essential to make sure that readers know what genre your book fits in. Book cover design is basically communicating information as quickly as possible so that readers understand this is the right kind of book for them, where it belongs on the shelf, because they're not going to be browsing all of the shelves. They're going to be looking at the one shelf that they want. So what I've done is added a bunch of automatic prompts. If I choose dark fantasy or urban fantasy, let's do fairy tale fantasy, and then I go to the next step. I've already got this design brief with some of the right keywords, and you can go down here and change some of these common cover elements. So maybe I don't quite want those. Maybe I want the magic soft lighting, fantasy appropriate fonts, intricate decorative border, or whatever. These are kind of just a quick and easy way to get closer to the right kind of cover design for your genre. And it's already got a basic prompt to make a book cover design with your book title and author name. It's important to have the quotes around the book title and author name so that the tool knows that that should be in the text. And then there's some really cool stuff we can do with the reference image, but I'm going to do that later. Let's just see how the basic tool works. So I'm going to click this button here, generate cover. Some of my previous covers pop up right away, even though I'm logged out. I tried to do an incognito window, but because I'm logged out, I hit my limit. Right now I'm giving away 3 covers per week for everybody. You don't even have to log in or create an account. That probably won't last because this is actually kind of expensive to generate these covers. Here you can see the cover that I just made. It got the book title and the author name right. It basically did the fantasy appropriate fonts and intricate decorative border, which looks okay. But because I hit that 3 cover limit, now it's saying I could go and use ideogram directly. Ideogram is the image generating tool that works really well with typography. You've probably heard about Midjourney or DALL-E 3 or OpenAI's new 4.0 image generation is pretty good. Everybody's kind of working on an image generated model, but they don't always get the text right. So because Ideogram is the best, that's the one that I used. You can sign up directly to Ideogram if you want to use it, or you can upgrade for more covers and use my tool. The advantage of my tool is that there's a lot more going on in the back end. I spent a couple hundred hours testing this out and using all my experience as a book cover designer to make sure that the results are on average better than you would get anywhere else. I need to put up like a gallery of some of the covers. These were just the ones that I made when I was testing the tool. And on average, these are about what you would get for $75 to $150 if you were trying to buy a pre-made book cover. What they do pretty well is get the genre right and the typography right, and even sometimes the lighting and the mood. I tested a bunch of different genres. These aren't necessarily like in the $500 or $600 range for book cover design, which is what you would pay for like really good book cover design. But they are in the range of, mid-tier cheap book cover design or book cover design templates. Like I mentioned, I've made, hundreds of these, and I wasn't even trying very hard. I was just trying to get, does it work most of the time? But even so, some of these covers are really creative and pretty well done. The results of some of these, I think, are fantastic, especially for the price. Especially because, like I mentioned, you get 3 free covers anyway, so you might as well try it out and see what you get. Typically, in my experience, you don't get the perfect book cover right away. You can see how great the tool is, and you can get pretty close, and hopefully that's exciting enough for you to stick around and try out the tool. But the fun part is, spinning and regenerating and getting closer and closer to the perfect cover, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do next. Sometimes you get an image without text every once in a while, and that's sort of a pain. I'll also tell you how to try to fix that. And sometimes it'll make like a 3D mock-up instead of a book cover, maybe 1 out of 10 times. So it's not that common, but it still is happening sometimes. So I logged into my account so we can keep playing around with this tool. So I put in the book title and author name again. I'm going to click the button. This time maybe let's try a non-fiction. I'll go philosophy. And then it'll give me some common cover elements. I can pick some of these. Let's try a brain or head silhouette. That's sort of the problem. These are, they're definitely the right things to put on your book cover design because you do need to communicate what the topic is and what the genre is very quickly. But the problem is, every book on philosophy or psychology has a brain or head silhouette. So there's a balance between doing what's very obvious to get the most readers or doing something different, which is maybe not as obvious or intuitive, and risking losing a bunch of readers because they don't get what your book is about. But anyway, I'm going to take that one off. I'm just going to click relevant symbolic imagery. Maybe it'll come up with some ideas. I like to choose something about typography or fonts if that's an option. It should kind of be built in, but I mean, it kind of is, but you still, like in fantasy, if it says choose fantasy appropriate fonts, you might want to try that. Or if you know what you're doing, you could come in here and add the type of fonts that you want. Like you could say a bold sans serif font or a serif font like Cinzel. I think you could name a specific font and then it would get closer. Fonts are tricky because with this tool you are generating an image, you're not using another font. So while it might get close to another font, it's not going to be an exact replica. So you don't need to buy a font and get a font license because you're not really using the font. But I would be a little careful anyway. If you name a specific font and it looks like you've actually gotten that font perfectly, you might want to buy a font license just in case, even though it's not necessary. Maybe potentially someone asks you about it in the future, which is very unlikely, but let's say they suspect that you use this font and didn't get a license, and you are protected because you don't need it with generative AI, but you might want to have it anyway. That's a big discussion with the images as well. You are not creating any copyrighted images because none of these images exist in reality. But if you named a specific person or something that's, a brand or a Mickey Mouse or something, then it's possible that it could make the thing that you asked for, and you want to be careful not to do that. Anyway, I'm going to hit the button again. Because I'm logged in, now it's going to show me my 6 previous covers, and I can click to see all of my covers. Now that I'm logged in, I can also see my credits up here, and I can see this new link, My Covers, which goes to a page of my gallery. So here's the book it made me. It's pretty boring, to be honest, but most like academic university philosophy books, they kind of look a lot like this. So I don't love it, but on the other hand, I wouldn't want, a bold, flashy commercial book cover for a philosophy book because I would want it to look professional and trustworthy. Once you've generated an image, you can go down to your previous covers if you want to see one of them again. It'll show back up here. I also can download the image directly, and I could make a new variation or remix the cover. So the new variation is basically just like if I hit this generate cover again, it's just going to do the exact same thing with these exact same prompts, but it might get better. So I would probably recommend hitting the button a few times to see if you get closer. And if not, then maybe taking a look at your prompt and doing a little bit different. There's also this upscale button. When you do find a cover that you really like, these standard images are pretty big actually. They'll look great on social media, but they're not quite big enough for 6 by 9 inch 300 dpi. So this upscaled premium version gives you like a Kindle ready version for publishing, and you could even use it for print if you add the spine and the paperback. I don't have the option to make a spine and paperback in this tool yet, but that's something I'm working on later. I have a bunch of upscale credits because I've bought a ton. I've been testing this tool, but if you want to upscale one image, you can use a credit. If you remix a cover, it's similar. It's going to actually analyze this image and pull information from it to know what you like, what you don't like, and it'll give you a new variation over here. This just costs one generation credit. And you can try specific things like if it got the title a little wrong or a detail a little wrong, or if you want to change one little thing, you could try to change that thing. I would leave it at 50% and just run it, or maybe add a specific detail, leave it at 50% and then run it. It may take a couple tries. I've actually had pretty good luck, even if I want to change the text a little bit or like change a girl's dress to red versus black. Sometimes it works, pretty remarkably well. Other times it doesn't. That's why in these packages, you basically get a lot of generation credits and one or two or three upscale credits because you only really need the upscale credits for the cover you're going to use to publish. So like your final version that you really want to put out there. So this is what the home page looks like. If I go to my covers page, I'll see all the covers that I have made, and then I have the same options to download or remix or enhance quality. So that's something maybe we'll play with a little bit earlier. Also, some of my book covers, you can see it made up some other title and name. That's because I've been trying to use book title and author name as like my default text, but Ideogram thinks that it needs a real author name and a real title, so it just makes it up. I've tried to fix it so it doesn't do that. It's annoying because when it does add a cover, a real title and a real author name, I think the results are a lot better. So some of my favorite covers are when it made that mistake and made up the information, but I don't think that'll happen to you because you'll be using a real author name and title. Other times, sometimes it will use some of the prompt text. So because I didn't add any subtext, it added this not perfect text that came from my prompt, which isn't great. Little things like that we can fix or remove and then just add text above it. It's not that hard to fix things once you've got close. Like this cover is good enough that it's probably, it's probably worth fixing the details because other than that little, weird text down here, it's a pretty strong cover. Here's some more that I like a lot. I won't show you all because I do have, hundreds of these. This one turned out really cool, except it didn't add the title at all. I'm showing you that, it's not always perfect, but it's perfect, like, not perfect, but it gets the job done 50% of the time, probably. And pretty well compared to any other book cover design tool or template option out there on the internet. This works pretty well. If I wanted to try fixing one of these, this isn't always going to work perfectly, but if I remix this, it's going to take a minute to analyze the image and I can add my details. If it got the text wrong, but I like this image, I could add book title by author name and see if running it 50%, it can fix it. Sometimes it does, but not always. It looks like it got almost halfway there. It's kind of a big change because it's trying to do 50% of this image and then 50% new, so it doesn't do the text all the way. I could play around with changing the image weight to get less of the original and more of the new, but it's a little tricky to completely redo the text once it's already done. It's possible probably you could keep respinning it, but there's another way that might work better. If I want to get back to the cover design tool, I'll click on the home button. This is actually on my DIY book cover site. So if you click the logo, you'll go back to the main site. But now we're back on this page. So we're going to try again. I added the book title and author name. I'm going to choose a genre. I actually don't remember what genre that previous cover was, so that's a little tricky. It could have been fantasy, dark fantasy, but I feel like it might have been mystery and thriller, psychological thriller. It could have even been horror, like a gothic horror or psychological horror, supernatural horror. These are all, they'll all give you slightly different results because each of them have slightly different subgenre prompts. I'm actually going to go back and try dark fantasy, even though I think it might be a little bit off. Because I think the font of that cover I was just showing you looks like a fantasy font. Probably one of the prompts has like a spooky house in the background, and that's the right one. But this time I'm going to use this reference image. So I'm going to grab that cover I was just looking at and put it up here. I guess the drag and drop isn't working very well, but I just uploaded the image. So now what it's doing is reading this image and making a description of it down here. You can do two things. If you just upload an image, I would leave it at 5%, which I've tested and it seems to work the best, because we don't want an exact copy of this cover. We want to make something kind of similar to it. It's trickier if you really want an exact copy of that image. Like hypothetically, if you uploaded a reference image and you set the image influence to 100%, and then you just added the book cover design titled book title by author name, maybe it would put the text on the image, but I'm guessing not, because if you ask for a 100% image influence, it'll give you the same image basically with no changes. But you could probably try that if you just want to, if you have a good image and you just want to add text to the image, this might work. I haven't tested that specific function yet, but it'd be fun to see if it works. What I was trying to do is, this is a cover that got the text wrong, so I was trying to make something similar with the right text. I'm going to set the image weight to 5%, and I'm just going to let this run basically how it is. What this will do is it'll send the image and the description and my book cover design brief to Ideogram, and it'll use all that to try to make a good cover. So this actually worked pretty well. It got the font almost identical. It's a pretty similar font. It got the spooky background. They even put in a full moon, which I was thinking about asking for. So not all that stuff was in my design brief, but it got a lot of that information from the image. The reason I think it didn't work perfectly is because the original image has a lot more text, so it didn't know what to do with all that space because it was trying to match the original image and I didn't give it enough words. So if you had a more similar title, that might work better. But even so, this is close enough. I think if I remix this a few times and tried to fix the title, I think I could do it. But let's try it another way. I can actually remove this image and just keep the description of the image instead of using both. I could copy this and save it. I can add it directly to my brief, and now underneath my main brief, I'll get this big description of the thing. So something I just noticed is this description it made from the picture, it's actually picking up the entire title, The Haunting of Darkwood Manor, which is probably why the results aren't great. That's something I'm going to try to fix on the back end. But if you are playing around with it and it's not quite working, you might want to copy this or add this to the brief, and then you could remove the image by clicking on this button. So this is pretty useful, especially if you're not really sure what you want on your cover yet. You could get some ideas from other covers that are best-selling in your genre. You want to be very careful that if you use the description, obviously you delete all the title text because that's not the right name for your book. But I might say something like fantasy fonts title. I might repeat my title and author name up here because it's really important to get that part right. You got to put the book title and author name in quotes. And also, of course, you don't want to copy anybody else's cover specifically. So if it's a very specific scene, you want to remove anything too specific and change it so that it's authentic and unique. It's never gonna match someone else's book cover exactly unless maybe you did like a 100% reference image. And most commercial covers do use tropes and cliches in the sense that every genre has specific common elements that communicate that genre that readers are used to seeing. So you can't really copyright a font or a style or a color. But you do want to be careful. I always try to look in my categories and scan the top 100 bestsellers and make sure my covers don't look too close to anything like those. On the other hand, you want your cover to look close enough to those top 100 bestsellers that your cover looks like it belongs there. So it's a little bit of a balance. You do want to be careful not to copy anybody else's cover design. But it's a useful starting point if you're not quite sure what you want in your cover. You could analyze some other covers that you like and read the description and then merge all those descriptions together with unique specific elements. So this description is why we got that big gothic mansion here, even though it wasn't in my original uh, book brief. But it screwed up the title because it had that extra information, which I am going to try to fix. So if we generate the cover again, we should get something kind of similar, but also kind of different. So you can either upload the reference image and run it at 5%, try even 15 or 10% if you want. And then I would also try copying the description and just editing it up here. You could also do this with any picture. So if you find a really cool picture on Pinterest or something and you want to make something kind of like that, I wouldn't use specific artist names or author names or anything a little too weird. But just to get a general description of the type of thing that you're trying to go for, like if it's a specific kind of art or illustration or photography or whatever, the describe reference image feature might help you get some of the keywords you need to get that particular style. Anyway, so we got another one. This one doesn't really look as good personally, and also it doesn't really look like our reference image, which is to be expected because I removed the reference image and we tried to make one just with the description. The other thing I should point out, I have another article on my site, Creative Indie, which is like the three main layouts for book cover design, and almost always most commercial genres have one protagonist because stories are about people. If it's an epic fantasy or an epic sci-fi, the people will be really small because the world in the Odyssey is very big. If it's an urban fantasy, which is more character driven, then the character will be larger, taking up about 2/3 of the cover. So like the distance that your character is to the camera and to the background, that communicates genre. Same with the colors, same with the font. So it's important to get some things right. But you often want a main character. You can try a montage or three main characters, but the vast majority of books have one protagonist on the cover, and it's harder to get multiple protagonists right. And I say this because your default design prompt is probably not going to say every time, give me a character that looks like this. So probably you do want to describe a character and say, looking away from the camera or looking at the house or from the back or however you imagine the scene. I have seen some really cool things where you can just roughly sketch a bad drawing of your imagination for the book cover, and AI can actually turn that into art pretty well. I'm going to try to put a tool like that on this site later. But just for fun, I uploaded some cool character art here as a reference image. I'm going to try running it at 5% and just keep all of this same stuff. It's kind of interesting what it did with it actually. So I used this character art, which is actually a pretty great piece of digital artwork. I should mention I've been using Midjourney for a couple years. I've tried DALL-E 3. I've used a bunch of all the different AI generative tools. I think something this high quality is probably done with Flux with a lot of extra effort. Flux seems to have like the most realistic design. I probably will try to create a character generator tool so that you could make artwork like this on my site and then add typography to it, because you can see that this book cover, it just isn't quite the same. It went for a really weird like epic fantasy Princess Leia type thing, I can actually look at what happened if I look down here at the prompt. I can add this to the brief just to read it. I would guess it's stuff like mystical and ethereal, which is more like this and less like my original picture. It might have been the blue form-fitting outfit. Anyway, that's kind of why I think you should probably add this to the brief and edit this. On the other hand, you're going to get closer results if you just use the image. Maybe what I'll try first is boosting this up to 25%. And also, I don't love these fonts. I'm going to choose Grim Corrupted Landscape, Atmospheric Fog, Fantasy Appropriate Title fonts. And maybe get rid of this grotesque creatures, shadowy figures. Yeah, it's not quite giving me what I'm hoping for. It looks like though when I clicked on some of these, it reset my prompt, so it wasn't the full prompt from. Because remember, we got some of our prompt from the last book cover reference image, and it didn't save that part. So I copied the description from that last image to get the character right, and then I uploaded this other reference image. Now I'm going to run it again. So the only difference is I'm using this image as a reference, which again has the wrong text down here in the prompt. So I don't know if the text is really going to be perfect. I am going to try to fix that. But then I also have my character reference. The reason I'm showing you how to do all this stuff is because most of your covers are probably going to want a character, and you got to know how to describe a character in a way that gives you good results. You can start with the reference images to get some descriptions of some images or some covers to get closer. I would copy paste these into like a text document just to keep track of all your prompts, and then you can test out different prompts until you're starting to see the results that you like. So this time we got the right book title and author name using this other image, but we didn't get any of the girl picture, which is too bad. I'm going to try adding this one to the brief, removing this one, and then trying again. That one didn't really work out either. It got this really nice typography. Like this font is really, really cool, but it added an extra word because it didn't know what to do, which is too bad. And it didn't really do anything with the background. So this would actually be one that could be fun to play around with if I remixed it. Oops, I can see I made the same mistake I made earlier where I just clicked add the description and it copied the title from the original image. So I can just delete that and then that'll probably get me closer. I'm also going to, let's try just, we'll rerun this one first. I'm still not loving these, even though there's sort of a cool effect there, and I do kind of like this title and typography. It's just not specific enough for what I'm going for. So maybe there was too much information, it didn't quite get it. I added the volumetric lighting, rim lighting, dramatic lighting. Sometimes when you have a character, the lighting helps the character stand out from the background, but it didn't give me a character here. What I was going to try to do is go back to this image and go to remix cover and then just put my prompt in here to see how well it does that. I think probably giving it like a specific character and a specific background and the typography is just a little too much, especially this gets a little bit wordy. So while it might get it right sometimes, it doesn't get it right all of the time. I'm going to try to just leave this at 50% and I'll hit the remix button down here with my additional prompt. I don't really have high expectations that this will work, but it's a lot of trial and error and playing around. That's why you can buy, 50 or 100 credits, which will last you a few hours probably, and with 100 tries, you'll probably get something pretty close. So this one's actually kind of interesting. It still didn't get the text quite right, but it got the background and it gave me a new character. It's weird that it looks like a little more sci-fi to me than fantasy. But the point was just to show you how you can get closer to the thing that you are looking for. And then if we are kind of close, I'll show you a few of the cool things that I've made earlier. So this one was a reference image. I just uploaded this symbolic triangle and it actually just put it on the cover. So that works better than I was expecting. I just had the basic prompt with the common elements and I added a reference image and it made a cover that used that reference image. Here's another where I just wanted to make kind of a variation and I changed the image weight a little bit. So it's pretty similar, just a slightly different variation. So if you want to change this, like you got a character, the cover kind of works, but you want to change the face or the hair or whatever, put her in a police uniform, you can just put in some keywords and keep respinning it to get closer and closer to what you need. Here's another one. I was trying to make the title bigger and I didn't really succeed, but also my image weight was really high, so I could probably have had a lower image weight, but that would allow more changes. So you'd like change the title, but you'd also change the character too much. What I'll probably do in the future is you will be able to like highlight this area and just remix that specific area. I think I can add that to the tool, so that's going to be more useful for fixing small details. But in the meantime, you can just remix things and play around with this and get different variations. So this is a brand new tool. Nobody's using it yet. I believe everything is working, but if you get stuck or have any trouble, you can go to help and you can find my contact info. I'm also going to be adding a bigger prompt guide and fixing the FAQ when we discover new problems. I'll add more features and make sure that, I fix all the bugs. Mostly it's working. It's working pretty well. Like I said, you will originally get 3 covers without even logging in. And then when you're out of your free covers, you'll see a pop-up like this. You can click to go to the pricing page. We do give you a lot of generations, but it's because I expect it could take that many generations to get your one perfect cover. It might not. It might take, 5 or 10. And then depending on your package, you will get some upscale. So like you could upscale 3 covers and have a trilogy, or with this level, you could upscale 5 covers for a 5-book series, which makes your total price per cover like $11 or $12 or something like that. And if you only need upscale credits, you can click here and just buy more upscale credits. I will probably have to change the pricing and I may have to remove the 3 cover free, the free 3 covers. I prefer to just give away everything for free, but this tool costs me money every time somebody uses it, so I have to be a little careful not to just give away 1,000 covers a day and go bankrupt. If it works for you, I'd love to know, how it went or what you had any trouble with, anything that you think could be improved. I'm happy to listen to feedback and make the tool better, especially like if you find a bug and something's not working, I definitely want to know about it. I'll probably also make a video about using ideogram directly, which is a really solid option for book cover design, but it's a different type of thing. Like all tools, using a direct AI tool gives you a lot of variations and options. You have a lot more flexibility and freedom to get exactly what you want, but the learning curve is a lot higher, and you would have to know how to create the type of prompts that get you the right results. The advantage of my tool is that just by setting up your basic title and author name, you're probably going to be able to choose the right genre and subgenre. And even if you do nothing else, you're going to get a pretty good cover that's pretty close to what could be the right commercial cover for your book to sell on KDP or Amazon. So it's quick and easy. It's free. I recommend using it. If you want to actually use it for real and get real covers, it may take some more respinning and remixing, but I will continue adding tools to make that easier because I do think this is sort of, the future of book cover design. I don't think there's anything as easy to use in terms of, the templates or the tools that I've made in the past. This is going to be a much shorter learning curve. So that's it for now. I hope that this video helps you understand how to use the tool. I hope you have good results. I'd be happy to hear from you either way. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.